Hello students. In my last video, we have studied about the loss of biodiversity. We have seen how there are going to be dreadful effects if we are not going to protect our biodiversity. We have seen how the impacts of biodiversity are going to be there if we lose them. We have studied the Rivett-Popper hypothesis. Apart from that, we have also seen what are the causes or the reasons for the loss of the biodiversity. In the loss of biodiversity causes, we have studied about the evil quartet. That means the four main reasons for the loss of biodiversity. And they were habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasion, and co-extinction. These were the four main reasons, also known as the evil quadrant, the reasons or the causes because of which our biodiversity is depleting day by day. Now, today, let's see how we can conserve our biodiversity, how we can protect our biodiversity. In the last videos, we have seen how important the biodiversity is. What are the reasons for its depletion? So now, let us study how we can conserve or how we can protect our biodiversity. So let us start with the biodiversity conservation. Here, first, let us see why we have to conserve the biodiversity. Or, in short, what are the reasons for conservation? The reasons for conservation can be studied under three heads: narrowly utilitarian arguments, broadly utilitarian arguments, and ethical arguments. We can divide the reasons for biodiversity in these three parts. Let us study the first one, narrowly utilitarian arguments. When we are studying about the narrowly utilitarian arguments, here we will see how the human beings are deriving the benefits from our biodiversity. Suppose if we are not thinking about the ecosystem, let us not think about anyone else, let us not think about any other organisms. Let us think in a narrow way or a self-centered way or a selfish way why we have to conserve the biodiversity. So that is called as the narrowly utilitarian arguments. So if human beings are becoming selfish and thinking why we have to protect our biodiversity, still there are reasons. Even if we think only of the human beings are deriving many economic benefits from the nature. For example, the biodiversity is giving us food, the nature is giving us food, firewood, that is the wood for the cooking of the food, fiber, construction material, industrial products like your tannins, lubricants, dyes, resins, perfumes, and medicines. All these from where you are getting? You are getting it from the nature. There are so many variety of things in the nature, variety of foods you are getting, because of which you are surviving, because of the which humans are surviving. Around more than 25% of the drugs are derived from the plants. Then around 25,000 species of plants have medicinal value. Take the simplest example of tulsi that is being planted in front of your house. Or you take the example of the weed that is going to be present, what you call in Marathi, Lazarichi Zada. That is when you touch, the leaves will close. Touch me not, the plant also it is called as. Those are also having a lot of medicinal values. Simple to simple plants are having medicinal values. So around 25,000 species of plants have medicinal values. We are having variety of foods which we enjoy eating. And all this is going to be because of the biodiversity. And hence, if we are thinking in a narrow sense, also biodiversity conservation becomes an important aspect. Coming to the broadly utilitarian argument, coming out of the humans, if we want to think about the nature, if we want to think of the ecosystem, then biodiversity plays a major role in many ecosystem services. What ecosystem services our biodiversity is doing? Here, let us take the example. Oxygen that is present in the Earth's atmosphere. Around 20% of this atmospheric oxygen is only got from the Amazon forest. So, Amazon forest produces 20% of total oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. Talking about the pollination. Pollination is going to be a process from which the pollen grains are getting transferred to the stigma of the flower. You know that. So, pollination is occurring through the bees, bumblebees, birds, bats. So, without the pollination, the fruit will not be formed. Without the fruit, there will be no food. So, in short, the pollination through bees is because of the biodiversity. Aesthetic pleasure means the peace of mind that you get. For example, suppose you are in a busy schedule whole week, and on the weekend, that is maybe on a Saturday, Sunday, your family or your friends decide to go into a jungle for a picnic or into some resort into the forest. How pleasantful it will be to be in nature. It gives you an aesthetic sense, it gives you a pleasure and peace of mind to be in nature. Today, everywhere we can see only concrete jungles, that is, large buildings and concrete roads. But apart from this, when we are going out of this into nature, it gives us pleasure. So, that is aesthetic pleasure. The third is going to be the ethical argument. The literal meaning of the term ethics means what is right and what is wrong. According to the ethical argument, who has given human beings the right to kill other organisms? Or who has given the human beings the right to decide which organism has to be killed and which organism has to be reared? We always cannot think about human beings. It will be totally wrong. So every species has an intrinsic value. Each and every species is important. And we have a moral duty to care for their well-being. Each and every organism, each and every species is important to the nature. And we being the superior beings, as we say, it becomes our moral duty to protect each and every species that is present in nature, because each and every species has its own role to play. Coming to how can we conserve this biodiversity? What are the methods for the conservation? What are the types of conservation? Let us see. So, in the types of conservation, we can see there are mainly two types of conservations: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. In situ conservation will be on site where the organisms are there only. If we are protecting them, it becomes in situ conservation. Ex situ conservation is off site, outside the site. That is, we take the organisms from their natural habitat, out of their natural habitat, and we are protecting them outside their natural habitat. So, that is ex situ conservation. Let us see each one of them in detail. First one, coming to in situ conservation, that is on site. wherever the organisms are there in the natural habitat, there only we are going to be protecting them. So that is in situ conservation. Coming to in situ conservation, here the conservation of genetic resources within natural or human made ecosystems in which they occur. That is, wherever they are living, there itself we have to protect them in their place of living, that is, within their natural resource. So, that is going to be called as the in situ or on site conservation. Within the natural resource, within the natural environment, it can be also a man made ecosystem. Here, in situ conservation is where we are not putting animals in any cage, or we are not putting animals any boundaries. Wherever they are present, we are protecting them. So, that is going to be there in situ conservation. Examples of the in situ conservations are national parks, sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, cultural landscapes, natural monuments, etc. Talking about India, India has around 14 biosphere reserves, 90 national parks, and around 448 wildlife sanctuaries. So, first one, let us take the example of the national parks. So, talking about the national parks are areas where it is strictly reserved for the welfare of the wildlife, where private ownership, cultivation, grazing are prohibited. That is, no one can come and tell it is his land. No private ownership is allowed. You cannot do any cultivation, agricultural crops and all you cannot grow over there. Grazing, you cannot take your cows and buffaloes or goats in the national parks for grazing. All this is prohibited. So it is strictly for the welfare of only wildlife. Maybe the plants or the animals. Both are protected in the national parks. Example of a national park we can see in India, that is the Irvikulam National Park in Kerala. Then coming to a sanctuary, a wildlife sanctuary. Here, unlike the national park, in wildlife sanctuary, mainly protection is given only to the animals, wild animals. Herein, collection of the timber, minor forest activities, minor forest products, collection of timber and minor forest products and private ownerships are allowed, so long as they do not harm the animals. So what is happening here? In the wildlife sanctuaries, only animals are given the protection. Animals are given protection, and here if they want to, some of the local people, those who are staying there, tribes or the villages that are coming under the area of the sanctuary, herein the collection of the timber is nothing but the wood, cutting of the forest for the construction of the houses or for some other construction work, or even for the burning, that is cooking, they require wood. For that purpose, the local people are allowed to take the timber from the forest. And even other minor forest products, like for example the fruits, if they are coming, or the flowers or some medicinal plants, they are allowed to take by the people who are staying in the villages which are coming under the sanctuary. And even here, some of the private ownerships are allowed, Like in the wildlife sanctuaries, they are allowed to take a resort or for the wildlife safaris. They are allowed to do all that. Example of such sanctuary is a Periyar Wildlife Sanctuary in Kerala. Then coming to the third one, that is your biosphere reserves. So biosphere reserves here areas of land or coastal ecosystem for conservation and sustainable use. So here some of the areas are reserved, they have to be protected, and there the land can be used but only sustainable use, means without harming the atmosphere, without harming the ecosystem, you can do certain activities there. Example is a Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Then coming to the next in situ conservation is a sacred grove. So what are these sacred groves or the sacred forests? So sacred groves or sacred forests are going to be forest fragments which are communally protected based on religious beliefs. Now what is happening? Some of the people are there, tribal people, who believe that forest is God, or that area of forest something is there, so we should not go over there. Or in some kind of the forest even there are temples built or small stones are being worshipped, and they are going to be calling that the forest is our god and we are not going to harm the forest. So on the religious belief, the community over there is only protecting the forest. So such type of patches of land or the fragment of land which is going to be protected by the community staying over there based on the religious belief is going to be called as the sacred groves. We are having such sacred groves in our India. Example, sacred groves in Kashi and Jayanta hills in Meghalaya, Aravali hills of Rajasthan, Western Ghats region of Karnataka and Maharashtra, Sarguja, Chanda and Bastra areas of Madhya Pradesh. So these are going to be some of the sacred groves of India. These are examples are going to be important. These can be asked for your exam. Name some sacred groves of India. They are Kasi and Jayanta hills in Meghalaya, Aravali hills of Rajasthan, Western Ghat region of Karnataka and Maharashtra, Sarguja, Chanda and Bastara areas of Madhya Pradesh. Going forward, let us come to the second type of conservation, that is off-site conservation, that is outside their habitat. We are taking the organisms from their natural habitats, we are taking them outside and we are conserving them. So conserving of the organisms outside their habitat, natural habitat, is known as ex situ conservation or off-site conservation. Example of ex situ conservation are genetic resource centers. Here in the genetic resource centers, seeds of the plants and semen of the animals are kept into protected containers and areas and protected for the future generation. It is a laboratory technique, you can say. The next example of ex situ conservation is the zoological park and wildlife safaris. Zoological parks are nothing but your zoos. You are going into the zoos to watch the animals. It is going to be a method of ex situ conservation, wherein the animals are brought out of their natural environment, kept in protected cage so that they can increase their number, and the increased number is again let out into the forest. Wildlife safari parks are also similar things. Here you can see the organisms are living in large areas and the human beings are allowed to visit them and see them from close view but not allowed to harm them. Here large territories of animals are going to be there and human beings can go study and visit the wildlife safari parks. Other examples are going to be botanical gardens. Here botanical gardens are going to be nothing but the areas or the gardens wherein different variety of plants are grown. So one example of botanical garden is Indian Botanical Garden that is there in Havra. Here in the botanical garden different variety of plants are grown, protected and multiplied. Gene bank is another genetical laboratory method wherein different crop varieties are protected, their future generation is protected. Suppose by chance if any plant species in law is lost and it is important, such plants are protected in the gene banks. They are preserved so that in the future, if we require that plant, we can take the genes from that bank and cultivate that plant. Cryopreservation is such technique which is used in the gene bank where we are keeping the genes or we are keeping the plants at a very low temperature so that they are retained or preserved for a longer time. The meaning of cryopreservation is only preserving at a very low temperature, that is maybe even minus 190 degrees Celsius in some cases. So that is cryopreservation. Coming to the next part is hotspots. So what are these hotspots? Hotspots here does not means your Wi-Fi hotspot. Here hotspots are going to be regions with very high species richness and high degree of endemism. Herein, in which areas are called as hotspots? Those areas which are going to be having high species richness means more number of species are going to be there in less area and it is having high degree of endemism. What is endemism? Endemism is nothing but when a species is confined only to a specific region. Means a plant or an animal is found only in that area. And suppose if we are taking that plant or animal from that area and putting it somewhere else, it will not be able to grow. It will not be able to survive. So such a species, if we are going to be finding more into a particular area, it is known as endemism. And also most threatened species means which are having a danger to extinction. So wherever such a type of species are there or such type of areas are there where there is high species richness, high degree of endemism and most threatened species, we are calling them as the biodiversity hotspot. Here two important definitions. Definition of hotspot is asked and even the definition of endemism can be asked for 1 mark. Then again coming here to an important part, there are around 34 hotspots in the world and from that we are having 3 hotspots in our India or they are present at the borders of the India you can say. Even this becomes a 3-mark question. Name the hotspots of India or name the hotspots which cover the India's biodiversity. So the 3 hotspots connected to India are Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma and Himalayas. These are going to be the 3 important hotspots of India. Which are they? They are going to be the Western Ghats and the Sri Lanka. Then we can see it is going to be your Indo-Burma area. This is the Indo-Burma hotspot, and then the Himalayas, you can see that these are going to be the biodiversity hotspots of India. All hotspots together cover only less than 2% of the Earth's land area, but they are having a very high species richness. Means in little area also they are having many number of species, and hence it is important that we protect these. So protection of hotspots reduced the ongoing extinction by 30%. That is, we are seeing that how the species are being lost. So when they started protecting the hotspots, around 30% of the extinctions were reduced. Coming to the biodiversity conservation at an international level, there are many efforts going on at international level for conserving of biodiversity. Among that, the two main that were taken place are, first was the Earth Summit, which took place in 1992 in the Rio de Janeiro. Now this Earth Summit was being called, Earth Summit was nothing but a meeting being called with the objectives like conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of biodiversity, and sharing of benefits arising from genetic resources. So what were the three main objectives of the Earth Summit? They were, first we have to protect, conserve biodiversity, they discussed that. Then if we want to use the biodiversity, then we have to use it in a sustainable manner. Means in a manner due to which the biodiversity will not be affected. In that manner we have to use the biodiversity. And third was, if some benefits are coming, we have to not fight on, the different countries should not fight on that area. Instead, the benefits have to be shared. So on these basis, the Earth Summit was taken place, and these were the objectives of Earth Summit, which took place in Rio de Janeiro, wherein many countries came together in 1992 for the conservation of biodiversity. Another such Earth Summit took place in Johannesburg in 2002. This World Earth Summit on Sustainable Development was held in 2002 in Johannesburg in South Africa. In this summit, around 190 countries came together and pledged to reduce the current rate of biodiversity loss. That is, here 190 countries came together and signed or pledged, took a promise that each and every country will play an important role to protect the biodiversity and stop the loss of biodiversity. So these are going to be some of the important international efforts for conserving of biodiversity. With this, we end the lesson, that is biodiversity. We have studied what is biodiversity, what are the types of biodiversity. Then we went to where and how the species distribution is there in the world and then in India. We saw what is the importance of biodiversity, what is the impact of this loss, that is, if we are losing the biodiversity, what will be its impact. After which we came to the loss of biodiversity, which species have gone, which species are threatened. We came how to conserve it, conservation of biodiversity. And finally, we came to the international efforts of conserving the biodiversity. So this is your chapter 15, biodiversity and conservation. In my next class, that is maybe on Friday, next Thursday, I will be sending you the question and answers related to the biodiversity. Until then, please complete writing the notes that I have sent you until today in different parts.